It was a hot summer day in July 1950 for Tokyo's Haneda airport. Travelers bustled through customs, business as usual. But one man stood out. He approached the customs officers calm and confident. His suit was tailored, his accent faintly European. In his passport, his place of origin read, Taured. The officers paused, Taured. One of them asked, confused. They had never heard of such a country. The man looked surprised. It's near France and Spain, he said. I've traveled through here several times before. He was fluent in Japanese. His passport looked legitimate. Stamps showed he had recently been to Japan and other countries. France, Spain, Germany, even Tokyo. The customs officials called their supervisors. A small team gathered around the man. They asked him to point out Taured on a map. He did. He pointed to Andorra. But he insisted Andorra didn't exist. In his world, that land was called Taured. The officials grew uneasy. Was he delusional? Was this a trick? They took him into a side room for questioning. He was calm, cooperative. He said he was in Japan for business, representing a company he had worked with for many years. He gave them the name. They checked the company. It existed, but had never heard of him. He gave them the name of his hotel reservation. They called. The hotel confirmed a reservation under his name, but the company he claimed to work for had no record of sending him. He showed business documents. In his briefcase, contracts in multiple languages, stamped and official looking. The logos were correct, but the formatting seemed off, as if they were from a slightly different version. He had currency from multiple European countries. All real, all correct. But some bills bore symbols not known in our world. They kept asking questions. He kept answering. His story didn't change. His behavior didn't shift. He was confident he was telling the truth. They decided to detain him overnight. They booked him a guarded hotel room nearby. 2 immigration officers were stationed outside his door. The room had no balcony, only one door, locked from the outside. The windows couldn't be opened. The man went in calmly, expecting to be questioned further tomorrow. The guards took shifts. They heard nothing suspicious. At 8 a.m. the next morning, they opened the door. The man was gone. The bed was undisturbed. No sign of forced entry. No sound had been heard. His documents had disappeared. The airport searched frantically. Police were called. His photo was circulated, but no trace of him was ever found. Not in Japan. Not anywhere. No records matched his name or face. He vanished as quietly as he had arrived. Who was he? A spy with forged documents? A time traveler from another era? A visitor from a parallel world? Or just a well-executed hoax? Theories flooded in, but none explained how he vanished from a locked room. None explained Taured, a country no one had heard of, that he swore had existed for centuries, on maps, in history, in trade. To him, it was real as Japan, as real as the Tokyo skyline. The case was closed as an anomaly, a file buried in airport security archives. But it didn't stay buried. Years later, it resurfaced in books, on forums, and documentaries. The man from Taured became legend, a mystery that defied explanation, and a reminder that sometimes reality has cracks, and through them, the impossible slips in. They say history repeats itself, but what about the parts we forgot? Welcome to Echoes of History, the channel where we dig up the dusty corners of the past to uncover the weird, the wild, and the wait, what? Stories they didn't teach you in school. Grab your curiosity, and maybe a cup of tea, because what you're about to hear might just change how you see the world. The man's passport looked authentic. It had official stamps, travel history, even a valid-looking visa, but the country listed Taured didn't exist. Japanese immigration officers were baffled. They double-checked maps, databases, and diplomatic records. There was no mention of Taured anywhere. The man was just as baffled. He insisted Taured had existed for over 1,000 years. He pointed on a map somewhere between France and Spain. Right here, he said, tapping near the Principality of Andorra. It's been there forever. How do you not know this? His voice held no mockery, only confusion. Officials showed him the current map. He grew pale, staring at where his country should have been. This can't be right, he whispered. They questioned him further. Where had he flown from? Why was he in Japan? His answers were logical, if surreal. He said he had flown in from Europe, on business. He had visited Japan multiple times before. He even produced currency from Taured, bills no one had ever seen, with symbols no one could decipher. Yet the paper felt real. His driver's license listed Taured. So did his checkbook. All documents were consistent except with reality. They asked for references. He provided the name of his company, a meeting he was supposed to attend in Tokyo that day. Officials called the company. It existed, but no one there had heard of the man or scheduled a meeting with him. More phone calls followed, to hotels, to banks, to embassies. Every lead dead-ended, yet he remained calm. He wasn't acting like a con artist. He seemed genuinely distressed. Authorities weren't sure what to make of it, so they escorted him to a hotel, a secure room, guarded overnight. They planned to investigate further the next morning. Maybe he was delusional, or maybe this was an elaborate prank. He agreed to the arrangement. "I understand," he said softly. "I'll cooperate fully." Two guards were stationed outside his door. The hotel had no fire escape. The windows were sealed shut. No way out, no way in. But the next morning, he was gone. The room was empty, completely undisturbed. No one had entered or exited. Guards swore they hadn't left their posts. Security cameras showed nothing unusual. It was as if he had vanished, melted into thin air, erased without a trace. The documents he had carried, gone with him. No passport, no currency, no records remained. Japanese officials were left stunned. They launched a quiet internal investigation. But the trail went cold almost immediately. No fingerprints, no known relatives, no history of mental illness. Newspapers never picked up the story. It was considered strange, too, inexplicable to explain. Eventually, the report was filed away. Another unsolved anomaly in bureaucratic limbo, forgotten by most except a curious few. The legend of the man from Taured began to spread, not through official channels, but through whispers, through fringe books and conspiracy circles. He became an icon of the unknown, a symbol of what doesn't fit in the files, of a world just slightly out of sync. Some called him a time traveler. Others thought he had slipped from a parallel dimension. A glitch in the matrix, they said, but not everyone believed the story. Some claimed it was a fabrication, an urban myth blown out of proportion, yet those who looked closer noticed patterns. Similar cases, men and women who appeared and then disappeared with papers that couldn't be traced, with memories that didn't match reality, with knowledge of places that never existed. Was Taured a hoax, a mistake, or a crack in the structure of our world? If it was real, why was he the only one, and why did he vanish? Or was he taken back? After the man vanished, no one could explain how. No signs of forced entry. No alarms triggered. The guards were interrogated. They stood by their story. They hadn't left their posts. No one had entered or exited that room. The bed was still made. The towels untouched. No fingerprints were found, his or anyone else's. Not even the cleaning staff had been in. Surveillance footage showed only the hallway. And in that hallway, nothing happened. It was as though he had dissolved into thin air, erased from reality, leaving behind only questions and silence. Some investigators thought he had escaped. Maybe a spy with advanced tricks. But how would he vanish without a trace? Others suggested mental illness. A man who believed the fantasy, down to the documents. But that still didn't explain his disappearance. The story wasn't widely reported at the time. It was kept quiet, hidden beneath layers of official embarrassment, but whispers found their way out. Travelers spoke of the man from Taured in hushed tones. His story became part of airport folklore. An unsolved riddle passed between customs agents and night shift workers as the years went by. The tale grew stranger. Some said the man came from a parallel universe, a place where Taured existed, just not here. Others believed he was caught in a time slip, that he had crossed over by accident, and reality simply rejected him. A theory emerged: interdimensional travel. That our world might have thin places, tears in the fabric of space and time. And maybe, just maybe, he had walked through one. Then, he fell back through it again like a ghost slipping through walls, leaving behind only confusion. Still, skeptics dismissed the tale. They argued there were no official records of the incident. No names, no dates, no hard evidence, but there were patterns, strange anomalies in travel logs. Mismatched documents, foreign currencies from places that don't exist. A woman in 1992 claimed to be from Lisbon, not Lisbon. Her passport and accent didn't match any known nation. She disappeared a week later. In 2006, a man in Brazil handed over a driver's license from a country no one could identify. He vanished before the police could question him again. The license was later lost in a fire. Are these isolated coincidences? Or fragments of the same strange truth? Perhaps the man from Taured wasn't alone. Some believe the world is more fluid than we imagine. That reality isn't fixed, but shifting slightly, constantly. That now and then, someone slips through. Most of us don't notice. We pass by them in airports, on sidewalks, in quiet rooms. Their presence feels odd, but not threatening. And then, they vanish, back to where they came from, or somewhere entirely new. The man from Taured wasn't trying to deceive anyone. He believed his story, because for him it was the truth. Maybe he woke up one day in a world almost like his own, with the same cities, the same airlines, the same sky. But one thing was missing: his country. And in that gap, reality unraveled, logic faltered, and certainty dissolved. We like to think of the world as stable, solid, predictable. But what if that's only part of the story? What if the cracks are there, hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment, or the wrong person? The man from Taured never reappeared. No relatives ever came forward. No one filed a missing persons report. It was as though he had never existed, except that for one day, in 1954, he had. And then he had it. His name remains unknown, his country forgotten or never real, but his story still lingers. In late-night forums and lost files, in speculative books and whispered conversations. A ghost story without a ghost, a warning that reality is not always consistent, that memory and geography may be more fragile than we believe, that we are all only one step from becoming someone else's mystery. Somewhere, perhaps, there's a man telling the reverse story of a country that no longer exists on his map, of a visit to Japan that no one remembers, of a world that looked like his but wasn't, and a hotel room he could never escape, except by vanishing. What makes this story persist isn't just the mystery, it's the unease, the quiet suggestion that the world isn't fully mapped, that there are blind spots in reality, places where the lines blur, where countries appear and disappear. Think about how we define existence. We rely on documents, maps, history, but all of these are human-made. What happens when someone's truth doesn't match ours? Do we label them mad? Or do we question the limits of our own knowledge? The man from Taured forces us to confront an uncomfortable idea. That reality might not be singular. That what we believe to be real may just be consensus. Consider the Mandela effect. Groups of people remembering the same wrong detail. Like Berenstain Bears versus Berenstain Bears. Some think these are simple memory errors. Others suspect they're glitches in the matrix. Moments when timelines shift and only a few notice. Could the man from Taured be a larger version of that? A living contradiction. A person who didn't belong but also wasn't lying. We imagine borders as fixed, but they change all the time. Countries rise, fall, rename, and dissolve. What if Taured once existed, but not here, not now, not in this thread of time? Could he have slipped from a parallel Earth? One so close to ours that the differences are subtle, until they aren't. Maybe in his world, Taured was real. A proud nation nestled between France and Spain, with embassies, passports, and stamps. Maybe he had friends there, a home, a language, a life. And then one day he wasn't there anymore. He wakes up in Tokyo, and everything is almost right, but not quite. That's the most chilling part, the nearness of truth, the closeness of something that feels real but isn't. We like to think we would notice a major shift, but will we? If your hometown was spelled slightly differently, would you know? If a street vanished from your memory, would you trust yourself or assume you were wrong? Maybe the man from Taured simply refused to doubt himself, and that's what made him terrifying. Not because he was dangerous, but because he was so certain. He wasn't confused. He wasn't delusional. He knew exactly where he came from, and no one else could find it. His world was real to him, and maybe that's all reality is. A shared agreement, a group hallucination we call the present. But what happens when someone remembers a different version? A version that no one else shares. That's how people go mad, or become myths. The man from Taured didn't try to explain the glitch. He simply stated facts, and when those facts didn't fit, he disappeared. Was he taken back, pulled into his own reality again? Or did ours reject him? We may never know, because cases like this don't leave trails. They leave echoes, whispers in customs offices, rumors in late-night radio shows, footnotes in strange history books, and they leave a feeling that things aren't quite as firm as they seem. That behind the curtain, the stage is shaking. Maybe you felt it, that moment of uncertainty. When something familiar looks off, a logo changed, a song lyric seems different, a childhood memory doesn't match the photos. We brush it off, tell ourselves we're tired, but maybe we've shifted, just slightly, just enough to feel the edge of another version. One where Taured is on the map, one where you were never late that day, where your keys were exactly where you left them, where someone you lost is still alive. These aren't just dreams, they might be fragments, and the man from Taured may be proof. If the story ended there, it might have been strange enough. But what happened next deep in the mystery? The man was placed under guard in a hotel room. Officials wanted to investigate further. They confiscated his documents and ordered him to remain inside. 2 immigration officers were assigned at the door. The room was on an upper floor. There was no balcony, only one door, only one way out. And yet, when they returned the next morning, he was gone. Gone from a locked room, no broken windows, no signs of escape. The guards were confused. The door had never opened. They had been alert the whole night. The man had vanished, along with all his belongings. His documents, passport, and hotel-issued ID disappeared. The entire case collapsed into silence. There was no one to question, nothing left to examine. Some suspect a cover-up, that authorities knew more than they let on, that something impossible had occurred and they buried it. Others believe he was never real to begin with, a hoax. Perhaps an urban legend wrapped in official language, but there were too many details, too many bureaucrats involved, and too many whispers afterward. The event was never officially recorded, not in mainstream news, but it lived in the margins, in police chatter, in customs training exercises, in the minds of those who were there. Some say they remember the man clearly, his accent, His confidence, his frustration, the way he held his strange passport like it was sacred. Others claimed they saw the documents, not forged, not crude. They looked real, just unfamiliar, like glimpsing a language you almost understand. So what are we left with? A man who claimed to be from nowhere, who appeared out of thin air and returned just as quickly. It doesn't fit into any box. It doesn't resolve cleanly. And maybe that's why it endures. Humans crave order. We want answers. But stories like this deny them. They sit in our minds like splinters, refusing to be explained, refusing to be forgotten. Some speculate he was a time traveler, that he arrived too early or too late, that his papers were genuine just from the wrong century. Others think he was a being from another dimension, testing our world, observing how we react to the impossible. But maybe he was just lost, caught between two worlds, like a boat drifting off course. Maybe he woke up that day with a headache, put on a suit, grabbed his documents, and boarded a plane, thinking it would be just another business trip. And then he landed in a place that didn't make sense, where everything was off by a few degrees, where no one believed him. Can you imagine how that felt? To be told your home doesn't exist, to be looked at with suspicion for speaking the truth, to be so certain and still be dismissed. That's a special kind of loneliness, not just being alone but being erased. The man from Taured has become something more than a traveler. He's a symbol of dislocation, of uncertainty, a reminder that no matter how much we map the world, there are still blank spaces, and not all of them are geographical. Sometimes, the unknown walks right through customs, hands over its passport, and smiles calm, confident, confused, and then vanishes, leaving only questions and a flicker of something we can't quite name. Some say it's just a myth, an internet-era ghost story. But if so, why does it feel so real? Why does it still haunt us? Maybe because deep down, we recognize it. We know what it means to feel out of place. The man from Taured is gone, but his story lingers. A tale passed from one generation of skeptics to the next. A mystery that refuses to fade with time. Because it's not just about one man. It's about the cracks in what we believe is real. The fault lines in our understanding of the world. The story reminds us how fragile borders really are. Not just on maps, but in our minds. We think we know where countries end and begin. We draw lines. We give them names. And we assume that's the whole story. But what if it isn't? What if there are places that exist, just not here? Not now. Some theorists point to parallel universes, multiverse theory, once science fiction, is now serious physics. They believe slips between realities may be rare but possible. The man from Taured might have been a traveler between dimensions, caught in the wrong version of Earth, desperately trying to return to his own. Imagine discovering your home was erased, not just forgotten but never written, a country that only exists in your memories. You show your passport, you give your story, but no one believes you. You're detained. You try to explain. You speak the truth, but it sounds like nonsense. Then one night, you disappear. No signs. No struggle. Maybe you found a way back. Maybe someone helped you. Or maybe the universe corrected its mistake. But even if he returned to Taured, who would believe us? What proof do we have that he was ever here? A few scattered documents, a missing man's report, a customs log with no signature. Nothing solid, nothing official. Just whispers and questions. And still people remember. Not just because of the mystery, but because of what it says about us. We're drawn to what doesn't make sense. To the eerie, the unsolved, the uncanny. The man from Taured feels like something out of place, just like we sometimes feel. Lost between where we were and where we're going. Speaking a language no one else understands. Holding documents no one will accept. Maybe that's why the story won't die. Because deep down, we all fear becoming the stranger. The one no one believes. A visitor from a country no one remembers. Standing at the border, trying to be let in, but rejected by geography, by logic, by reality. So, we retell the story. We pass it on in forums, podcasts, and late-night conversations. We add details, we speculate, we wonder. Was he a spy, a hoax, a glitch in the matrix? Maybe we'll never know, and maybe we're not meant to. Maybe some stories aren't puzzles to be solved, but mirrors to be stared into. The man from Taured reflects our need for answers, our discomfort with the unexplained, our fear that we might one day knock on a familiar door and be told it never existed. We like to think we know the world, that everything fits neatly on a map. That mystery is just ignorance waiting to be replaced by fact. But sometimes, mystery is the point. Sometimes, it's all we have. And maybe it's enough. The man from Taured reminds us how much we still don't know. About time, about place, about what it means to belong. He forces us to admit our maps are incomplete, that there are still uncharted lands not on paper, but in the soul. So, maybe the story isn't just about him. It's about all of us, wandering through the strange territory of existence, trying to prove we come from somewhere, that we mean something, that we exist no matter what the records say. So, here's to the man from Taured, whoever he was, wherever he went, Whether he was lost or just passing through, whether he was a man out of place or a reminder that we all are. The unknown isn't always outside of us. Sometimes it's the part we carry within. That's it for today's Forgotten Tale. If this story made you raise an eyebrow don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that dusty little bell so you never miss another echo from the past. Drop it in the comments. We're always listening for new echoes. Got a weird bit of history you think we should cover? Until next time, keep your curiosity loud and your history weird. That's it for today's Forgotten Tale. If this story made you